Hey everyone, welcome back to While You Were Cleaning. I picked up some thrift store items recently and I showed them in a few of my recent videos. I'll link those at the end for you. But today I wanted to show you how I am going to DIY these items to fit in with my home decor. I really love how each of these items turned out and I can't wait to share them with you. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you do, please hit that like button, please comment and subscribe, and we'll go ahead and get started. First off, I picked up these 3 glass containers. These are edible arrangement containers and they were 99 cents each. For my first step, I'm going to spray paint these in this Rust-Oleum brand flat gray primer. Rust-Oleum has 3 different shades of primer and any of those will work for this project. I gave these all a coat on each of the sides and then around the rim. I also found this vase at the same thrift store. This was $2, and I'm going to also give this 1 coat of primer with that same Rust-Oleum brand gray primer. I wanted to try something new on these vases, so we're going to be using some plaster of Paris, and you're going to need to measure out and mix together according to whatever the instructions are on the side of your container. This giant tub only cost me $4, and according to the instructions that I have, you mix 2 parts plaster of Paris with 1 part water. So I did 1 cup of plaster of Paris and 1/2 cup of water, and then you just mix until all the clumps are out. I wanted to make each of these containers look a little bit more like they are clay pots or just have a little bit more texture to them. So I used this coarse brush and I just started brushing around the sides of the container, leaving those lines on there. I used this brush the entire time. So the finished look is not smooth. You could use a smoother brush if you wanted your finished look to be smoother, but I really like the way that this turned out, and you'll see in the end it has a really nice lined finish to it. So I did that to the smaller containers, and then I also did it to this tall vase as well. And you just have to keep brushing in the same direction around the sides. You could do some really awesome finishes with this plaster of Paris too. Also, this tall vase had a crack down the side, so I think the plaster of Paris really helped hold that together as well. And then once the first coat was finished, I went ahead and started adding a second coat. By the time I got to the second coat, my plaster of Paris was starting to harden. It's really only good for about 6 to 10 minutes. So it was definitely starting to harden at this point, but I actually liked working with it a little bit better as it was a little bit more hardened, just because it seemed to go on a little bit thicker and I was able to get more defined lines in the side of my glass containers and my glass vase. You'll just want to keep blending the lines as you work your way around your vase or your glass container, whatever you decide to do this on. I really love the way that the lines turned out on this. And as I was adding on the plaster of Paris, I just kept going back over and making sure all of those lines blended together really well, so it didn't look like any of the lines just cut off in one spot. And it's kind of hard to explain that unless you do this project yourself, but here you can see those lines going around the edge, and I just wanted to make sure there weren't any sharp edges left with the plaster of Paris, so I just went over all of these with some really fine sandpaper just to finish up the edges a little bit, make sure that all the lines blended together. I did this on the taller vase as well, starting from the top and then working my way down. Also, once you are finished sanding off all of your containers, make sure you go back over and brush off all of the dust. Let the plaster of Paris dry for about a ½ hour at least, and then I went ahead and went over these again with that same Rust-Oleum brand gray primer. I'm going to be painting these a finish coat, and I wanted to make sure that the plaster, I figured it would be kind of porous and would really soak in the paint color. So a primer will just help that finish coat. I'll have to do less coats and it'll just look better. For my smaller pots, I painted them in this Rust-Oleum brand Deep Forest color in a satin finish. I didn't want the finish coat on these to be too glossy, so I wanted to go with a satin or flat or matte finish on these. I figured that the glossy just wouldn't look as natural like a pottery piece, and I wanted them to look as much like a pottery piece as I could. So I did add one first coat and then let that dry, and then finish these off with a second coat. And here's how they look all finished with the paint dry. I added some hydrangea flowers that I had in my house already. And as you can see, they have this really cool brushed finish on them. And I'm hoping to try out some other designs with the plaster of Paris in the future. For my taller vase, I'm going to use this Rust-Oleum brand Ultra Matte Spray Paint in the color Slate. This is really dark. It looks almost black, but it really is just a very dark gray color. These ultra matte colors are a newer thing that Rust-Oleum has come out with. They do have several great colors in a matte finish, and so I really like using these, especially on pieces like this that are supposed to look like pottery. So I did add one coat and let that dry, and then came back and finished it off with a second coat as well. And here is how that vase looks all finished. I really like how this one looks, and I'm hoping to find two other similar vases to this one, just in different sizes, so I could group them together on my mantle. I was really excited to find this pair of chairs at my thrift store. These were $6.99 each. The finish on these is still in great condition, and it's an awesome color. They really just needed new cushions. So I went ahead and first removed the cushions from both of the chairs. They were really simple to remove. There was a little bit of food stuck behind the cushions, so that was a little bit gross. But once I got the cushions off, I went ahead and wiped down both of these chairs with a scrubby sponge and some warm soapy water. These chairs are still sturdy and in great condition. Just washing them off and reupholstering the cushions will make such a difference. I purchased this yard of upholstery fabric for $10 from my Joann's store. If you've never bought remnants from Joann's, I did an entire video on it, and I'll link that above for you. Lay your fabric face down on a flat surface, and then I had a certain way that I wanted the pattern to run on my fabric, so I made sure that I lined up the front and the back edges according to how I wanted that pattern to run. And then you want to leave yourself about an inch of extra fabric on every side of your cushion. So go ahead and cut your fabric down to the correct size that you need in order to have an extra inch on each side. Then to finish this up, you'll need a pair of scissors and a stapler. You could also use small upholstery nails as well, but I have a stapler, so I'm going to use that. And I just used 3/8 staples in this. Make sure you have your cushion centered on the fabric where you want it, and then you can start stapling it in place. So these cushions have a ribbing detail around the edge of them, so I kind of had to use my stapler upside down on this front part because of the way I was trying to show you how to do this. So just make sure you add plenty of staples on this first side and on all of the sides. But because when you come to this back part, you're going to pull this fabric really tight, and I'm on top of the cushion here, so I can kind of squish some of the air out of the cushion so I can pull it even tighter. Because you don't want to end up later on that fabric stretching out and then you have extra fabric bunching on the top of your cushion. So pull it as tight as you can and then add a ton of staples. Next, we'll move on to the side. So this has this little dip where the arm of the chair was coming up, so we're going to try to work around that a little bit. But go ahead and add some staples along your flat edge. Most chairs probably won't have this indent where the arm is, but they will all have corners though. So corners, you just want to make sure that you pull it tight in several small pieces so that you don't have any large folds over top of any of your corners. I finished up the back and then the front corners. I did the front corner the same way. Just pull it in a section, staple that down, pull it in another section, staple that down so that your corners are really just pulled tight around the corner rather than having any folds on them. And then for this little indent for the arm, I went ahead and cut 2 lines so that I could pull back into the indent a little bit better without the fabric keeping me from stretching back into the indent. I repeated the same process with the other side of the cushion as well, and added staples to that side, and just like I did on the back side of the cushion, I pulled that nice and tight to keep it from bunching later on, and then I cut off the excess fabric. And here's how they look all finished. It really is amazing what a little bit of soap and water and some new upholstery can do to breathe some new life into some thrifted chairs. I'm going to be using these as a pair of accent chairs, and I really can't wait to find them the perfect place in my new home. And my last piece for today is this little cabinet that I found for $4.99 from Goodwill. I was really excited to find it. This is not made of real wood, so I decided that I wanted to paint this. I really like the glass door here with the gold lines added to it. It just really has a fun shape to it. I think maybe it used to be a TV cabinet because it does have a couple holes in the back. I'm not really sure. But first step, I went ahead and took some sandpaper to this. Now, like I said, it is not real wood, but just using some sandpaper on this is going to rough up that really smooth surface a little bit and make it easier for painting. And then I went ahead and used a screwdriver and quickly removed that hardware from the door. These little accent strips were already coming off, so I went ahead and removed those from the top and the bottom front. Once everything was prepped, I went ahead and moved on to the painting. After sanding this, I did go through and brush off all of the dust from sanding it. It's best to use a damp washcloth on that to make sure you get all of the dust up. And then this paint that I am using is a semi-gloss black color. It doesn't really have a color to it. The guy at the store just said, I'll make it black. So I said, that was perfect. So I really wanted this to be a black color. I thought that it would look really good with the shape of what this cabinet is. And then I also wanted it in a semi-gloss because semi-gloss will be easier to clean, because I do plan on using this as some sort of a side table, and those normally get kind of dirty in my home. Also, you can see here it has these silver metal accent strips that are coming down this side piece. I decided to keep those on there. I wasn't super careful about making sure that I didn't get paint on them, and I'll show you later. It was really easy to wipe that paint back off. But I did decide to do the inside of this cabinet as well because it has the glass door. I wanted the whole inside of it to be black. I'm tempted to put a pattern on the back of the cabinet, but I haven't decided yet. So for now, I just went ahead and painted it all out with just a plain black color, and then we'll see about maybe doing a pattern later. I was working on all of the projects in this video at the same time, so I was able to go back and forth, and that really worked out well for letting this have time to dry before coming back to do the second coat. And here you can see that metal accent strip. I went ahead and used a little sanding block or my fingernail and scraped that off. Here is how that little cabinet looks all finished, and I think that this is my favorite piece from today's entire video. I am in love with this little cabinet. I love how the black and the gold and the silver all go together. I love the glass door with the stripes on it. I decided to leave that little shelf brown. I may paint it out later, but for now it's just going to stay brown. And that is everything for today's thrift store DIY video. I really hope that you have enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed putting all these pieces together, mostly because they are for my new home. But let me know down in the comments which of these was your favorite, or if all of them were your favorite.